Hans knew the search party was beginning to lose hope. He knew they were tired and hungry. He knew that they wanted to stop, but he didn't care. He needed to find Anna. Since leaving Wandering Oaken's trading post, Hans had been pushing the group relentlessly. Despite the deepening snow and the increasing wind, he kept the pace fast and the distractions to a minimum. With every step they took, he felt the Duke's men watching him, their gazes cold and judging. He knew that they would report everything that had happened to the Duke. It could be Hans's undoing, so he kept his guard up and his back straight and did his best to focus on the task at hand, which meant keeping everyone moving fast. Your Highness. Hans whipped around in his saddle, but did not pull back on his horse's reins. One of the younger volunteers was trotting a few steps back. His horse's head hung low, and the boy was shaking. Your Highness, I know you told us we must keep going, but well... What is it, Thomas? Well, not me, Your Highness, but some of the older men. They are growing tired. We were thinking maybe we might stop, just for a few minutes. Give the horses a chance to rest, and then we can move on. There's a grove up ahead. I took the liberty of riding ahead, and well, it is a beautiful place to stop. It's actually quite beautiful. Hans raised an eyebrow. Did the boy honestly think he cared about seeing something beautiful? All he cared about was finding Anna and forcing Elsa to stop this winter. Then he would return to Arendelle the conquering hero. He would be applauded and hailed as the kingdom's savior. Elsa would be forced to abdict her throne, and he would marry Anna, become king, and finally accept control of the throne and the kingdom from his bride. Stopping to see beautiful groves did not fit in that scenario, but as he looked, the young boy shaking in his saddle, Hans realized he had little choice. He had to stop, at least for a moment. To insist they press on would make him look inhumane. His best option, his only real option, was to reassure the men that he was one of them, that he too felt the cold and that he too was tired. If he showed them all that he could power through it, they would have to do the same. Plus, if he were to return to Arendelle with Anna, but without some of the kingdom's beloved townspeople, it might put a dent in his glowing reputation. Very well, he said. We will go to this grove and rest, but only for a short while, and warn the others. This stop means we will only ride faster and harder after. Thank you, Your Highness, Thomas said. Thank you. I'll tell the others. Turning, he trotted back to the men. Hans watched as Thomas delivered his message and smiled when the men, delighted by the news, began to applaud. It never ceased to surprise him how easily people could be manipulated. He had given up a few moments of time and, in turn, garnered more respect. And then they reached the grove. Instantly, Hans' confidence all but vanished. In that moment, he knew that while he wanted to blame his fears completely on the Duke's men, the fault did not lie solely on their shoulders. It lay mostly, he now realized, on the shoulder of the person who has created the masterpiece he was looking at, Elsa. Hans had been clinging to one reassuring thought. Elsa was a monster who had covered Arendelle in snow and then abandoned her people to suffer. She had frozen the fjord and cut her kingdom off from any potential help. She had made children go hungry and families freeze. It was this, her utter lack of humanity, which guaranteed Hans's Hans his chance to be a hero. If the people of Arendelle feared Elsa, they would want her to be captured and restrained. They would want her to abrogate her throne, and in turn, they would want Hans to take it. For his plan to work, Hans needed Elsa to be the monster. And yet, looking around him now, Hans had to admit that Elsa's power was not only destructive, it was also beautiful. The grove Hans found himself standing in was surrounded by tall, mature willow trees. On a regular summer day, he imagined that their long, thin branches would have swayed gently in the warm breeze, and their distinctly feathery leaves would have made a gentle rustling sound. But it was not a regular summer day, and the leaves did not rustle. Instead, they tinkled. Elsa's winter had frozen trees, the branches hung low, and the frozen feathers and small buds were encased in ice. The wind blowing through the glen caused the branches to hit one another, filling the air with the sound of 100 wind chimes. It looked as beautiful as it sounded, even though the sun had long since sunk beneath the horizon. The glen still seemed to glow. Moonlight reflected off the frozen branches, bathing the whole area in a bluish-white light and causing the air around them to shimmer. If anyone in Arendelle saw this, Hans realized, his anxiety mounting, they wouldn't see Elsa as a complete monster. This place, whatever it was something special, something perfect. Elsa had created something beautiful, something pure, and in the not least bit any frightening. If this was any indication, Elsa was more powerful than Hans thought, and if her magic was this strong, well, Hans's plan might not be as easy to execute as he had hoped, unless Hans smiled. He had been looking at this all wrong. If Elsa was captured, she would be scared, and clearly when she was scared, her powers were dangerous, not beautiful. All he had to do was make sure she never created anything like this again. He would destroy this glen and any trace of beauty. No one ever needed to know what she was capable of. There was just one obstacle in his way. The Duke's men. Their alliance to the little man was off-putting, and their doubt in Hans was grating. Looking over, he saw that they had moved slightly outside the glen. As though allergic to all that beauty. What he needed was to have them on his side. And the easiest way to get a thug to do what you want, offer him a reward, of course. Kicking his horse forward, nay! Hans trotted over to the men. Both were holding hands, blowing on their fingers in the vain hope of making them warm. Gentlemen, Hans said, nodding in greeting. I think perhaps we got off on the wrong foot. The taller man lowered his hands. And how do you figure that? He asked, his deep voice rumbling loudly. Hans moved slightly closer and leaned in. I realize now, he whispered. I wasn't quite clear on how I can make this little adventure of ours come to your advantage. He waited to see if the men would turn and ignore him or keep listening. They kept listening. You are here at the behest of your Duke. But if I may ask, is he making it worth your while to risk your life up here on this mountain? The Duke ain't said nothing about making this things worth our while. The shorter the two of the men protested. He just said Eric and I should go with you. Shut it, Francis, Eric the taller thud said. We don't need to be telling this guy the Duke's business. Then he looked back at Hans. And we don't need nobody but the Duke. I mean, we don't answer to anybody, so you can stop your prying. You're right, Hans replied. I'm sorry. You don't have to tell me anything. The Duke is lucky to have two such loyal men. I suppose I can ask some of the other men to help me. I should have asked them in the first place. I just hate the idea of giving them land and title when they clearly are to be my subjects. I thought because you two weren't, you might like a little land and extra money in your pocket. You could make yourself a nice vacation home on the Southern Isles, get out of Whistleton during the winter and enjoy the warmth of my father's kingdoms. But since you aren't interested, Hans paused and shifted the reins as though to go. Who cared if he was offering something he couldn't actually deliver on? They didn't need to know that. They just needed to take the bait. For one tense moment, Hans was sure the Duke's men were actually going to let him walk away. But then Eric, who Hans quickly realizing was the brains of the pair, spoke up. What do you have in mind? Hans smiled. Then turning around, he wiped the smile from his face so he would appear all business. I need you to find me. I need you to help me capture Elsa alive. But the Duke sent us up here to kill her, Francis said, confused. Why would we want to keep her alive? Eric asked. Why did we even come up here if we were just gonna let her go? Hans let back a groan. Oh, he hadn't expected so many questions from the pair. He had just hoped he could dangle a reward of some kind in front of them and they would do whatever he told them to do. No questions asked. He had these two wanted answers, which he didn't have. Quickly, he tried to think of a believable reason why he would wish to capture to not kill the queen. A moment later, he had said he had it. No, 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 Hans finally replied. That is what the Duke wants, but is not what I want. Killing her would be the worst thing we could do. Look around you. Elsa is more powerful than we imagined. What if she is killed and the magic doesn't die with her? What if Arendelle is trapped in winter forever? I don't want that to happen, and I don't think the Duke would want that to happen. Such a lucrative trading partner. We need to capture her alive and get her back to the castle in one piece. If you help me do that, I will guarantee you both titles as well as land on my father's isles. Are we agreed? Hold on, Eric said. Then he leaned over and whispered in Francis' ear. Hans watched, holding his breath. At that moment, Eric held out his hand. We have a deal, he said. Hans smiled. Deal, he said, shaking the man's hand. That, he thought, as he turned and went to gather the rest of the men. It was far easier than I expected. Hans had no idea if killing Elsa would really be disastrous. In fact, he rather suspect the opposite. But disposing of the queen now created far too many variables. Hans was confident that for now he could talk his way to a happy ending. "Stop!" Anna shouted. "Put us down!" No matter how much she squirmed or wiggled, Anna could not free herself from the grip of the giant snow monster. The snow monster my own sister created to throw me out of her ice palace, Anna thought. A wave of anger rushed over her, immediately followed by a wave of sadness. She could wiggle all she wanted, but there was no escaping the truth. Her sister didn't want her around. Next to her, Kristoff struggled to free himself to no avail. His rosy cheeks were growing rosier as he kicked his legs. Olaf held tightly in the creature's other hand, was as usual seemingly unaware of the danger he was in. "You are a lot stronger than you realize," the little snowman said. In response, the creature pulled both back of his snowy arms and threw the three of them down the stairs. "Go away!" he shouted. "Ah!"
Heads up! Watch out for my butt!
It is not nice to throw people!
Whoa, Feisty Pants. Okay, relax. Just calm down. Calm down.
All right, I'm okay.
Just let the snowman be.
I'm calm.
Great. Oh, come on. Oh, see, now you made him mad.
I'll distract him. You guys go. No, not you guys! This just got a whole lot harder.
"So there you go, you big meanie," Anna cheered silently. "How does it feel to be the one getting bullied? What are you gonna do about it? Oh. Apparently the snow creature was more than happy to do something about it. As Anna watched, long spikes of ice began to form around the creature's joints. Turning back toward them, he let out a roar. "Roar! See? Now you made him mad!" Kristoff shouted. "I'll distract him. Olaf cried out heroically as the creature leaped over to the gorge that surrounded the palace. "You guys go." Before Anna could protest, Kristoff shoved her away from the snow giant. Looking behind her, she watched as galloped in the other direction, followed closely by Olaf's body and butt. Only Olaf's head remained in the snowbank, but as Anna watched in horror, the creature blew past Olaf, causing the little guy's head to land face down in the snow. There wasn't much they could do for him now. Anna was hesitant to leave Olaf behind, but she and Kristoff needed to get away, and Anna was sure Olaf would be okay. The two raced across the snow, trying desperately to outrun the creature. They slid down a steep slope and ran through a maze of the branches heavy with snow. Suddenly, Anna slid to a stop. Her gaze fell on the biggest tree with the heaviest branches, and she smiled. When she had fallen off Kiak, she had tried to pull herself up using a branch. As soon as she let go of the branch, it had swung up, sending all the snow flying, and knocked slow off the surrounding trees. And that had just been a little branch. If she were to use a bigger branch, running over to the nearest tree, she tried to grab it, the lowest hanging branch. She missed. She jumped again, her fingers grazing the wood, but still not getting it. Finally, Letting out a yell, she jumped up with all her might. Ah! Her fingers closed around the branch and she pulled it back towards her. She didn't have to wait long. Almost immediately, the ground beneath her feet began to shake. Anna saw the creature's big hand swipe through a section of trees, ripping them off out of the ground as though they were toothpicks. Anna's hands were trembling, her body shaking from the efforts of keeping the branch steady. From somewhere behind her, she heard Kristoff call her name, but she ignored him. Her attention was focused completely on the approaching snow monster. 3. She began to count and got closer. 2. He was almost there where she wanted him. And 1! With the shout, Anna let the tree branch go. Free of her weight, it snapped into the air. The snow that had sat heavy on the branch went flying, right at the creature. There was a thud as the pounds of thick snow slammed into the snow giant. Bullseye! But Anna didn't have time to gloat. She and Kristoff raced through the trees and past huge piles of snow, putting as much distance between them and the creature as possible. They ran down a small hill and then clambered their way up another, and then they ran out of places to run. Bursting through the trees, Anna and Kristoff barely stopped themselves before hurtling over the edge of a cliff. Windmilling their arms, they managed to stop their forward momentum just in time. Behind them, the creature let out an angry roar. Roar! It's a 100-foot drop, Anna shouted, peering down into the snowy abyss below. It's 200, Kristoff corrected. Anna looked over at him and cocked her head. Now it didn't seem like the time for technicalities. And seriously, why on earth was he going through his bag? Couldn't we wait to find what it was? Ow! She cried out as Kristoff took a rope from the satchel and tied it tightly around her waist. Then he dropped down to his knees and began digging what appeared to be a U-shaped hole. Anna looked over at him. What's that for? She asked. I'm digging a snow anchor. He replied as though that were obvious. Anna looked over at him skeptically. Did he mean we were going to jump? Anna gulped. What if we fall? She asked nervously. There's 20 feet of fresh powder down there. He explained. It'll be like landing on a pillow. Hopefully. Hopefully? This is the most insane thing she had ever done. But oddly enough, hearing Kristoff's calm voice calmed her, and she realized with a jolt that she trusted him. Okay, you tell me when, she said as behind her she heard the heavy footsteps of the creature coming closer. 1, I'm ready to go. 2, Anna bounced up and down, fizzing herself up, and then the giant tree flew through the air, right toward them. Tree! She shouted before she could even think about it. She jumped over the edge, taking Kristoff with her. Ah! They groaned together as the rope hooked on the snow anchor above and went taut. For a moment, they both just hung there, swaying gently about 50 feet above the snowy ground. Whoa, that happen? Kristoff finally said. He looked down at Anna. She shrugged. So that might have been the best move on her part. At least they were alive and away from the snow giant, opening her mouth to point out that fact. Anna stopped as she saw Olaf's head falling towards her. As he passed them, the little snowman gave them a big smile. Hang in there, guys. He called out, Olaf! As the little guy's head disappeared into the snowy mist below, Anna felt a jerk on the rope. Then another one, and another one. Looking up, Anna saw that the creature had grabbed the rope from their anchor and was pulling them up. And in another few tugs, they would be back where they started. Kristoff! Anna shouted, looking up to him for help. But at that precise moment, the creature gave a particularly rough tug. Kristoff was slumping over, his head slamming into the cliff. He instantly lost consciousness. Well, that's great, Anna said, trying not to panic. Looks like I'm going to have to get us out of this all by myself. She scanned the area, hoping to spot something useful. Her eyes landed on a knife hanging from Kristoff's belt. She reached up for it just as creature pulled them the rest of the way up, so they were hanging right in front of his face. Don't come back! We won't, she shouted. Then with one swift move, her fingers closed around the knife handle and sliced through the rope. It hung suspended in midair just long enough for Kristoff to come to, and then they started to fall fast. Anna barely had time to register that she might have just killed them both, for she landed with a thud in the snow. The surprisingly soft snow. Hey, she said, laughing in relief. You're right, just like a pillow. She turned, expecting to see Kristoff beside her. To her surprise, she saw Olaf instead. He was clinging to Kristoff's boots, which were sticking out of the snow. I can't feel my legs, the little snowman shouted. I can't feel my legs. Trying not to laugh at Olaf's genuine fear, Anna watches behind the snowman. Kristoff sat up, shaking his head and spouting out the snow. Those are my legs.
Oh, that feels better. Hey, Sven! He found us! He's my cute little reindeer.
Don't talk to him like that.
I'm glad that everyone is okay, Anna thought, struggling to pull herself out of the snow. After all that running, Anna felt drained. Whoa, she said as Kristoff lifted her out of the snow. As though she weighed no more than a feather, Anna had his hand linger on the small of her back as he placed her gently on the ground. His hand was so warm and reassuring. It felt as though it belonged there. You okay? Kristoff asked. Thank you, Anna replied. She looked back up at him and their eyes met. How's your head? She asked, reaching up to touch the spot where he'd had unfortunate runs-in with the cliff. Oh, he said, placing his hand on top of hers. Oh, then as though embarrassed, he waved it off. It's fine, I'm good. I've got a thick skull. I don't have a skull. Or bones, Olaf said. So now what? He asked, changing the subject. Now what? Anna repeated. What did Kristoff mean? Now what between them? Suddenly, Anna felt the blood rush from her face as the real meaning of Kristoff's question hit her like a ton of bricks. Oh, now what am I gonna do? She threw me out. I can't go back to Arendelle with the weather like this, and then there's your ice business. Hey, don't worry about my ice business, he said, cutting her off. He cocked his head and peered closer, as if noticing something for the first time. Worry about your hair. What? Anna said, shocked. Reaching up, she smoothed her hair down. I just fell off a cliff. You should see your hair. No, Kristoff said. Yours is turning white. Anna grabbed her braid, pulling it in front of her. Kristoff was right. The small piece of hair that had always been white had now disappeared in a much larger piece of white. As she watched, even more of her red hair changed color. It's because she struck you, Kristoff said softly. Isn't it? Anna wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. Would Elsa ever stop hurting her? She looked up at him, her eyes filled with sadness. Does it look bad? No. You hesitated. No, I didn't. Anna, you need help, Chris. He said, his tone gentle. No, come on. Taking her hand, he began to lead her away from the cliff. Behind them, Olaf and Sven followed at a slower pace. Where are we going? The snowman called out. To see my friends, Kristoff answered. Looking up at him, Anna smiled, despite her fear that was flooding through her. The love expert, she teased. But Kristoff's response was anything but teasing. Yes, he said seriously. And don't worry, they'll be able to fix this. How do you know? Anna asked, surprised by how upset Kristoff seemed to be. Because I've seen them do it before. I've seen them do it before? Kristoff's words echoed through Anna's mind. What did he mean, before? And who was them? What do love experts know about fixing weird white hair? Anna didn't know what to think anymore. In the last 24 hours, her life had been turned upside down. Now here she was with a guy, snowman, and a reindeer, love experts, while her hair, and a reindeer toward love experts, while her hair turned wider and wider. And the oddest part of it all, despite the frightful events that had just transpired, she felt completely at ease with this odd trio. Look, Sven, Anna heard Olaf's cheery voice say, the sky is awake. Turning her head, Anna smiled. The snowman was lying down on Sven's back, his eyes turned up to the stars above. The northern lights were bright, their bluish-green color almost blocking out the stars. Olaf was right. The sky did really look awake and very much alive, Anna thought. Suddenly, she felt a chill rush over her and shivered. Are you cold? Kristoff asked concerned. A little, Anna said. Kristoff reached out his arm, and for a moment, Anna thought he might put it around her. The thought made some of the cold ease from her bones, but he didn't. Instead, he took her hand and pulled her off the path. Then he pointed to the ground. Anna's eyes grew wide. All around were pockets of snow-free ground. It looked like the area was one big white and polka dotted blanket. For one snow-free patch, a gust of steam vented up, blowing out warm air. Anna said, walking over and placing her hands in the steam. Instantly, she felt less cold. Looking up at Kristoff, she smiled at Kristoff in thanks. Together, Anna and Kristoff began to walk along the steamy path. So, Anna asked, breaking the silence, what's the deal with these friends of yours? Are they really going to know what to do? And what exactly makes them experts? Kristoff's face turned bright red. Yes, they do know what to do. He stammered a bit more, and then fell silent again. Well, do these experts of yours have names? She asked, still curious. Are they doctors? Should I call them Dr. Love Expert, or just plain old Miss and Mr. and Miss? Hardy har har. Kristoff's fake laugh faded into a frown as he shot her a look. For a brief moment, she wondered if she had pushed him too far. Clearly, the guy was sensitive about these people they were going to see. But why? Anna wondered. Does he think I'm going to embarrass him or something? Just as Anna was about to explain how polite she could be in a not-so-polite way, Kristoff cleared his throat nervously. Well, I say friends. They're more like family. Family, Anna thought. I did not see that one coming. When I was a kid, it was just me and Sven, Kristoff began to ramble, until they took us in. I don't want to scare you. They can be a little inappropriate and loud, very loud. They're also stubborn at times and a little overbearing and really, really heavy. Anna stifled a smile. He didn't know it, and he most definitely wasn't trying to be, but Kristoff was being pretty darn adorable. His family, whoever they were, and they did sound rather odd, but whose family wasn't, clearly meant the world to him. I wonder if that's why he hasn't talked about them until now, Anna thought. If I had something that special, I would want to keep it close. Too, I bet he had the most wonderful childhood. I guarantee no one shut doors in his face. But before that, he must have been so alone. He had said it was just him and Sven. That must have been hard. Realizing that Kristoff was still talking, Anna focused. But they're fine, he was saying. You'll get it, they mean well. Anna couldn't help herself. Overwhelmed with emotion, she reached out and gently laid her hand on Kristoff's arm. Kristoff, they sound wonderful, she said softly. I can't wait to meet them. Kristoff smiled, obviously relieved. Well then, follow me, he said happily, pulling his arm away, beginning to stride ahead. Behind him, Anna watched her smile slowly fading away. She had meant what she said. She was excited to meet Kristoff's family. But thinking about family had made it impossible for her to not think of Elsa. Elsa, who was back on that mountain somewhere, looked away in her ice palace. Elsa, who wanted nothing to do with Anna. I like walking, don't you? Olaf's voice cut through Anna's deepening thoughts, and despite the sadness that was settling in her heart, she smiled. I do like walking, she replied, very much. Have you ever walked on a beach in the sun? He asked. I hope I get to do that someday. I hope you get to do that too, Anna laughed. She said, even though she knew it was impossible. She paused, drifting back into her thoughts. What are you thinking about? Olaf asked. Anna smiled. Family. How nice it must have been for Kristoff to have a family that cares about him so much. I have a great family, Olaf said. You do? Anna asked. Sure, you and Sven. You're my family. I like you and you like me, and we all helped each other back there, so isn't that family? He turned and looked up at Anna with his big, innocent eyes. Anna thought about it for a moment. You know what, Olaf? I think that's exactly what family is. I thought so too, he replied, wobbling on. I mean, I think I'd probably do anything for you, just like how you climbed the whole entire mountain to see your sister. But she's family, right? Yes, Olaf, Anna said softly. I care about her very much. I'm just not sure how much she cares about me. She didn't want me in her palace. Olaf looked thoughtful, and he smiled. Maybe she was just having a bad day. Do you know what I like to do when I have a bad day? I like to think about summer, the beaches, and the sun, and as the little snowman continued to talk about his summer dreams, Anna kept thinking about what he had just said. She knew the reason Elsa had kicked them out wasn't just because she was having a bad day. She was kicked them out because she didn't want them there. But maybe she did that because she cares in her own strange way. For a moment, Anna's heart was warmed with the thought. Then she remembered how coldly Elsa had looked at her and the warm feeling faded. It wasn't going to do her any good to think the impossible. All she could do now was focus on getting to Kristoff's family and hope they would know how to fix what Elsa has broken.
Family. Hey guys.
They're rocks.
You are a sight for sore eyes.
He's crazy.